Next Curve.
Hey everyone, welcome to Next Curve Rethink webcast/podcast. I'm Leonard Lee, executive analyst at Next Curve, joined by my good friend and fellow industry and tech analyst, Prakash Sangam of Tantra Analyst. Hey, how's it going, man?
Very good. Glad to be here.
You're looking good.
Back again.
Looking good, Prakash. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about and recapping an event that is near and dear to our hearts. Sensors Converge, which celebrated its 40th anniversary. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
That's amazing. So congratulations to the Questech family, the folks at Fierce Electronics, as well as the folks at Sensors Converge, the team that puts this event on every year and have put this event on for the last 40 years, which is quite incredible.
Indeed. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's great to be part of that legacy, right? I mean, you know, it's and it was a great event this year. But before we get started, please remember to like, share, react, and comment on this episode, and also subscribe here on YouTube and on Buzzsprout to listen to us on your favorite podcast and platform. Opinions and statements by my guests are their own and don't reflect mine or those of Next Curve. We're here to provide an open forum for discussion and debate on all things tech and sensors and edge AI. So with that, hey, let's get started.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you think?
I think it was a good event. This is my fifth time or so, I think, attending this event. I definitely was there last year. And compared to last year, I think there are more people. I think it started a little bit slow and I got in the morning. I mean, I got in very early. It was a little thin, but I know it grew pretty rapidly throughout the day. And I left about around 4 o'clock, 3:30, 4 o'clock on the last day.
Yeah.
Usually on the last day, I mean, by that time, people are packing and leaving.
Yeah.
But I still saw a lot of people around the booths. Still, the booths were up, exhibits were up, demos were up. So it was pretty well attended, I think. I think it's like 5,000 or something, they said, the attendance.
Yeah, it was up like 18% according to them, the registration.
Last year.
Yeah.
And also, I thought, again, it's my view that it was more diverse. In the previous years, it used to be only focused mostly on sensors, but I thought I saw different things this year. Of course, tons of sensors, but also a little bit more on connectivity. Of course, Edge AI, but there was more talk of Edge AI this year than last year, for example. So, I saw more connectivity, which I was not expecting. Of course,
that's
3
interesting.
years ago, there was more connectivity because 5G was going great. Everybody was talking 5G, although not showing. But this year, I saw Halo, which is a Wi-Fi, long-range Wi-Fi for sensors and IoT was there.
Yeah.
And there was Edge AI for sure. More IoT. Yeah. Last year, I think IoT word was suppressed, but this year, I saw a few IoT, people talking about mentioning IoT.
Yeah. Yeah.
In context to Edge AI, yeah.
Well, it's funny because it all just ends up being IoT. It's just IoT is just this really amorphous idea, right? It's a concept. It's not the whole collection, like AI, right? Everyone's like, oh, do you have an AI strategy? Right. It's like, well, what do you mean by that? And then, typically they can't explain themselves, but that's a different problem. But IoT has the same problem. If you ask them what is IoT, then the only proper response is something incredibly simple, and then it's just an idea, but it all ends up being IoT in some form, and I agree with you. But it's curious that you saw so much connectivity. I didn't see as much connectivity as I saw in the past, but you rightly mentioned that in years prior, There was probably more present due to, private wireless. I think that about 3 years ago, that was like a big thing.
Yeah.
You had the 5G, especially, and Vita X, some of these macro outdoor themes that was reflected in the exhibition hall. I thought there wasn't that much, but that's
and then also I saw a couple of interesting energy harvesting companies. I mean, it's all part of IoT as such.
Yeah.
So those were interesting. And also, since I don't cover sensors that much, so maybe those look more interesting to me than the same. Everybody has their gas sensor or some other kind of a sensor. So that could be just me. Who knows?
Yeah, a lot of mention of IMUs, right? That it seems like the wearables market is, we saw a little bit of it last year, but the wearables market, it seems to be influencing a lot of the conversation. So when you sat in the sessions, the technical sessions, there was a lot of mention about novel devices, personal devices, whether it's for medical devices or for personal computing, right? Whether, it could be, a lot more talk about smart glasses.
Yeah. Not so many demos, though. I mean, I would say in the previous years, there are more, the talks of, but demos, like 2 years back, even in last year, I think almost every other exhibition had some sort of a glass as a demo, right? I did not see much, probably not even one demonstration of AR or XR glasses. So I was actually surprised. I was expecting more. And I saw, I mean, to your point that devices, edge devices, there used to be like, I saw I went on talking to a couple of startups. Basically, they had a wearable with fall detection and such in an extremely small, very light kind of a pendant. And it had some AI for detection and so on. So it was not just based on a sensor, but much more intelligent sensing rather than just sense it and so on. So
still a lot of
on the wearable side. Yes, a lot of
that. I think the scale down. So like in AI supercomputing, it's all about scaling up. Right.
Correct.
And then, there's the scale out aspect with networking, but the scaling down.
Yeah.
Right. There's like in the sensor world for AI, there's like scaling down. Right.
Correct. Yeah.
I think there's been a lot of traction there because a few years ago, ML was just being kind of introduced. Pretty close to the sensor. It was not quite on device. That was still exploratory, but now you're starting to see more of these companies actually embedding AI functions and augmentation on the sensor device itself, right? And so it's either co-packaged or packaged with the device, or it might just be a peripheral, but it's very, very close to the actual device. So the architecture seems to be changing around smart sensors.
Correct. Yeah. And then, I mean, the smarts, I think there was discussion of smart sensors as well, right? But the smartness is now replaced by AI. And I also saw many of these AI not for the sake of AI, but they were doing specific things which needs that smartness.
You're right. So application specific, but then like what I was mentioning earlier about the scaling down. I heard some guys on the floor, a couple of companies talk about how they were able to run a model that was only a few kilobytes. I mean, very application specific. I mean, maybe
Right.
we used to call these algorithms, right? But the
Yeah.
models themselves are
Yeah.
have a very, very small footprint, but
Yeah.
are extremely capable.
Yeah. And
And
then
that's
just
the kind of
yeah.
cool thing.
And just to make sure that our audience understand it correctly, this is the place where Sensors Converge, where AI is not LLM, right? These
Yeah,
are
yeah, yeah,
yeah, right. So
yeah,
AI
yeah,
was
yeah,
not equal to LLM there, right? These are all
yeah,
there were some I saw which were using small models SLMs, but none of them were using LLMs. It
yeah.
was real either legacy AI or with their optimized their own proprietary models.
Yeah, they're still doing some more. They're still doing a lot of the more conventional sensor fusion
Yeah,
type of things, right? So if you
yeah,
look at, let's say, a perception system, it's more of the old school stuff where you're aggregating data at some point from a
yeah,
multiple sensors and then synthesizing, a little bit further away, and maybe even really far away from the sensor. And so, the automobile is a great example of that, right? Like you said, we see small language, maybe SLMs in the bed. That's still even really early, right?
yeah, yeah,
But we are seeing more of that application specific machine learning that's moving its way closer to the sensor to reduce the amount of data,
mhm,
and then introduce efficiencies that way through the rest of the system. It's like, how do we tackle the fact that most, serialized data or streaming data coming off a sensor is just the same stuff, right?
yeah,
How
yeah.
do we, instead of having all this data
Transfer.
streaming having to be processed, how do we just nip it, that volume very close to the sensor, and then make the system more efficient and streamlined in terms of the throughput requirements and latencies, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
it's really interesting.
yeah.
It's a different universe. It's different. Well, actually, it's different, but similar to AI supercomputing.
Yeah, I mean, so even when AI is not talked about, right? Like
Yeah,
edge intelligence is basically same, right? You don't
yeah,
want to send all the tons of data just blindly,
yeah.
upstream it to a server. You only send what is relevant and then have intelligence edge, I think it was
Mhm.
called before edge AI came into picture. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, good.
So
So yeah.
you had a panel. Was it a panel? You had an interview, right, or a
Yeah,
fireside
I had a
chat? Tell us
fireside
a little
chat.
something.
Yeah, I had a fireside chat and a round table, as they call them.
Mm,
So the fireside chat was with Tony of E5 Networks. It was on the test and measurement stream. It was
mm.
well attended. I mean, I was surprised that there were enough people there that they were interested in test and measurement and the log.
Yeah.
Tony, I'll butcher his last name. He is from E5 Engineering. He's a fascinating guy. He basically had his ex-military, so he had tested tanks as well as he worked in Tesla for testing. Remember the famous, um, steel ball hitting
Yeah,
Tesla
yeah, yeah. The
from
Cybertruck.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Cybertruck, and he says he still has that ball with him. He was involved in that testing. Fascinating guy. So we had interesting discussion on how testing has evolved. Before AI and now, with AI now, and there is discussion on whether simulation can with AI. There's so much of simulation going. Can it ever fully replace physical testing? Obviously, I
Yeah.
think the gist of the discussion was, of course, now there's tons of data which was not there before, which means you can do much better simulations. And earlier, everything had to be physical testing before you can even understand what is wrong or how it is performing. Now you can do quite a lot with through simulation. And also we have so much of data, so you can do much more analysis before going to the next
Next
level of
step.
testing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
De-risk
but there's
stuff.
still correct, and but still there is testing of course is needed. It will never replace physical testing, but it is more of a conformance testing kind of a thing, and confirmation testing, if you will, that you very well and your postulates and hypothesis you very well understand, and you're testing it for a specific thing rather than let's collect the data, analyze it, and look at it, that kind of stuff. So it was
Yeah.
interesting discussion.
Yeah, that's and sensors are interesting in and of themselves for in terms of the maintenance of and the calibration
Yeah,
of
testing
sensors
and
and sensor
calibration.
devices.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting that you need sensors to calibrate sensors and
Yeah,
test them. And then, they're used to provide that grounding. So I also had a panel discussion that I was moderating, and it was on AI plus sensors, right? And so it was a pretty it was a pretty cool discussion around how AI is influencing or impacting what we can do with sensors, right? And then vice versa, how sensors are improving or impacting what we can do with AI. And one of the big themes that I picked up on at Sensors Converge is this whole notion of digital twinning, right? And it aligns really, it aligns really well with what you mentioned,
simulation,
because simulation is one thing that you can do, but what is required is to have the sensors that can actually capture the physics of a particular scenario or environment, or an asset, and then be able to provide that fine-tuned, grounded data set or augmentation of what you have, whether it's synthetic or it's sourced from other ground truths that you somehow acquired. But the role of the sensor becoming increasingly important. And so I think what we're going to probably see next year is all this interest in simulation, especially when, as you hear all these folks talk about all the wonderful things that AI supercomputing can do, that's going to provide some gravity to this growing interest in sensors and perception systems, because I think that is becoming more of a thing, especially as the topic of physical AI starts to enter the hype cycle.
Correct. I mean, the digital twinning, I think I heard about, we talked about it, obviously test and measurement is a key input to building a digital twin. It was part, I heard I heard about in your panel and couple of others as well. I was surprised that it's not so much of demos of digital twins on the shop floor, right? Maybe because a lot of the demos were from smaller companies who provide sensors, not the full system where you need to build twins and such. But
there was some from QNX. There were a few, but no, I agree with you. It's not the holistic digital twinning application or scenario. It's like little bits and pieces of it that, if you looked at all of these examples in its totality across all the different stands, then you're really talking about digital twinning.
Right. So, for example, there was NXP, Bosch, they had reasonably sized booth. I mean, they are the ones for building the systems.
Actually, NXP, that was like the smallest NXP booth that I've ever seen. Because usually they have like this massive booth, and I think NXP, come on guys, get a bigger booth. Jeez.
Yeah. It was their show in a way, right? I mean, and they had some presence in the sessions, but not that great, that much, I guess. So, yeah, and I would expect them like Bosch could have really put the digital twins stuff, the digital twins that they're working on, which I'm sure they are, and how the sensors feed in and make that digital twinning possible, right? That would have
Yeah.
been a cool demo and illustration of the importance of sensors.
That we might see that next year because that's
Okay.
what I'm saying. I think
Yeah.
that narrative is being stitched together this year, especially as
If they're listening, then maybe that's the expectations to put on them, right? NXP, Bosch, and other larger systems players. I
yeah.
think the market is expecting good digital twins, not just stocks, showing digital twins of the systems that you're working on, which I think
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
area. Yeah.
Yeah. And so just a real quick shout out. So my session was called AI and Sensors Exploring a Special Symbiosis. And the folks that I had on my panel were Emmanuel Cantone, who is the product marketing manager at ST Micro, Azita Arvani, our friend. You know her, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, she's a good buddy of ours, former CEO of Rakuten Symphony, who's doing her own thing with AI. Simon Ford of Belcon, he's a really cool guy, really smart dude. Formerly of ARM, and Yuhan Long, who is the founder and CTO of Inframove, and then Rob Watts, who is the AI architect, one of probably many AI architects at Intel.
Yeah.
He's a very funny guy, and I really enjoyed moderating this panel. Did you?
I
You
really
said
like
you saw it?
Yeah. Sorry.
You saw it?
Yeah, I mine was overlapping, so I only saw the first part. I loved how I forgot his name. Intel architect introduces him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Rob Watts. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, we invented a new term. It's called sensor smushing. So, yeah. Write that down, everyone. Sensor smushing. It's going to be a big theme for for Sensors Converge 2026. So, any other takes?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned in the first part the Wi-Fi has not new, but not many people know about it. A long-range version, basically for not just indoor, for outdoor use, right? For medium speeds. It's called Halo. It's 802.11ah. I worked on it long back ago when I was working for Qualcomm. I was, excited to see that there are many players now. None of the big players, all of them talk about it. They have contributed to the standard, but they have not announced any product as such. Qualcomm, Broadcom, and others. But I saw a couple of, not couple, a few companies which have products in the market now. Their initial pioneers were Neurocom is one, which they were. I talked to them. I don't work for them, but I brought some of them on my shows and so on. They were the only one. It's a Korean company, but there is Mega Chips is building modules for them, which I went and talked to them, and the many use cases. There is a company which manages, the waste management. They're using Halo modules and Halo systems.
Oh, okay.
And there are products from few companies. Murat also has a product, module. And there's another company called I forgot its name. So Morse Micro has a chipset for Halo. So and I think it's still smaller companies doing it, but there is more traction. A lot of people are coming and asking about it as well. I was at WCA booth, and at a booth of our own as well. I'm on the board of WCA, and a lot of people coming in, especially from medical field, coming and asking for long range, secure Wi-Fi or any technology that is not Bluetooth or Zigbee, because there are tons of them, and they want something other than Bluetooth. and Zigbee. So yeah, that was, I mean, that was kind of a revelation for me. Going,
Wow.
I did not
Yeah,
know
yeah.
it was that big before, because you only get to hear from the big guys and then never talk about 11AH or Halo. So.
Yeah, yeah. And
And
yeah,
an energy in harvesting. I mean, there's a lot of work happening on the on 3GPP as well with ambient IoT, where
yeah.
you basically harvest the RF energy so that you have extremely low power devices without batteries. They can be there anywhere, like environment sensors and so
Yeah.
on. I saw a few companies who have them, and then there is wireless power kind of is coming back. I
Mm.
worked with a couple of companies, so there are some good demonstrations. Apart from just wireless charging for phones, which is kind of mainstream now, but there is wireless power wherein rather than just this magnetic the induction charging, there's something called magnetic resonance charging, which is, remember long back Apple had this announced this product and they could not do it. Like I have a tray on which I can throw all my devices and
Oh
then
yeah,
it
yeah,
will
yeah.
charge.
Mm.
So there, the technology exists. Actually, Qualcomm also worked on it. I was I when I was with Qualcomm, we worked on it long back, and then ultimately they sold that technology to a company called Vitrocity or something like that. I saw a couple of demonstrations of that magnetic resonance wireless power,
Mm.
including charging and so on, which will be interesting for IoT, right? So, which means you don't need a battery at the device. So, based on the RF that is in, or your
Yeah.
shooting RF beams to these devices, they capture RF and make energy from it, and then power themselves. So, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's a whole interesting
perfect for
field.
sensors, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And no, no, that is the it's going to be interesting how all that transpires, because you have the cellular flavor, you have the
Yeah.
Wi-Fi flavor. There's all these different wireless technologies that
There's
are
LoRa
developing. Yeah,
coming,
LoRa.
big
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
cellular IoT, NB-IoT. And obviously,
Right.
you don't see much of that at this show, the cellular folks. But I did meet a person from T-Mobile.
Mm.
Basically, I had a quick chat with him. He was visiting all the booths trying to sell T-Mobile cellular IoT for the sensor folks. So I hope they do it more. I did not see
Yeah,
from
I yeah.
volunteers.
Well, I think this year the focus was more on, well, obviously AI, because it's such a hype
Yeah,
thing at the moment, and the folks at Edge AI Foundation were there. So
correct. Yeah, they have to
Peter's
have a
crew,
demonstration.
and
Yeah,
then yeah.
yeah.
So I had some chats with them about where's the state of generative AI, because everyone's wondering, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you mentioned SLM before,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I think maybe next year we're going to be talking more about new perception architectures. And so I coined this thing called long thinking sensor data fusion. And it was really coined
It's
as a
pretty,
joke,
yeah,
but I think
it's
it
pretty
might
long though.
actually, yeah, it might actually become a thing. So I'm looking forward to, I might actually speak on this next year.
Sure.
It's about long thinking.
What do you mean by long
Sensor
thinking?
data fusion.
What do you
So,
mean by that? I did not get what.
well, it's you have reasoning models, right? They do
I
long
see.
thinking. So this like
I see.
agentic framework and bringing it closer to sensor data, so that you can fuse the data
I see,
and
sir.
then get more, let's say, contextual information out of it, more of the sort of situational awareness capabilities that you might want to get out of a perception system. So
Yeah, yeah,
we'll see. I mean, I kind of batted around the idea jokingly with a bunch of folks, and and then
yeah,
this popped into my head, and then I shared it with them, and they laughed, and there you go.
yeah. Yeah, I
So,
attended a session by Edge AI Foundation.
uh huh.
Yeah, it was pretty. The use cases were very interesting and real life, right?
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
So the sense I got is we talk about AI, in abstraction, but this is where AI basically is happening, and the tons of shovel-ready use cases that companies get work on and make money on. It's definite need. So
Yeah. Well, Pete
yeah,
Bernard is a member of IoT Coffee Talk. So
yeah,
he does not have any latitude to exaggerate and be all hyped up. So,
yeah,
that organization is going to keep it very, very real.
yeah, yeah,
So, under his leadership, at
yeah,
least. So,
yeah.
yeah, I'm really excited about Edge AI Foundation. I'm really glad to see that there's that
Mhm.
collaboration going on,
Yeah.
and I expect that they're going to do some crazy stuff next year. So I'm looking forward to Sensors Converge next year. I think it's going to be a really good one, and it'll probably be a lot bigger because
Yeah.
this is a hot area, right? Whether people
Yeah.
know it or not right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think the biggest issue is they're huge players in sensors, which they don't have to come to us, event like this. Rest others are pretty small players, right? So I think that's wherein maybe big players should come and help Questex make it even bigger.
yeah. The big players. But I mean, the thing is, the big players are in the audience. So if you bump into some of the people,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
the
saying
customers of all this stuff are
correct,
really big players.
correct. Yeah, they're scouring for information and new kinds of sensors and such. I think they should. Come and spend a little bit and make it a bigger platform, right? Then they can bring in even more people that they can serve.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
Well, I'm on the board of directors, and so one of the things that we're thinking of, one of the things that I shared was this idea of doing something similar to TM Forum's Catalyst,
yeah,
and then that might bring some of these larger players that you're talking about
yeah,
to the conference to work with some of these sensor companies as well as AI companies and systems integrators to prove out and
yeah,
maybe even develop some joint IP around advanced perception capabilities. And
yeah,
these things will obviously push the frontier what you can do with autonomous vehicles,
yeah, yeah.
smart glasses, blah blah blah.
So simple. If you take agricultural systems as agriculture as a market, most of it is driven by sensors, right?
Yeah.
But there was no Honeywell, for example. There were no John Deere there. None of the Rainbird. I mean,
Mhm.
irrigation systems have so much of sensors. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
surprised that none of the big guys are there. I mean, yeah. I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of times when I talk to them, they have their own events, and then they say, "Why should we come here?" But
Yeah.
it is you grow the industry by collaborating on
Yeah.
on a forum like this, right?
Well, one of the interesting things about Verge
Mm.
is their location.
Yeah,
A lot of the big customers are located there, so it's
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
cool event.
yeah.
It's unique in that way, and that's why it draws like an international crowd. So you
Mm.
look at the exhibition floor. There's companies from all over the world, and
Yeah,
even though it's not like this 100,000, it's not like Embedded World, but
yeah.
it still has a good deal of it draws a lot of interest across the sensor industry.
And I think majority of the people attending are engineers as well.
Yeah, it's totally technical and nerdy, and it's
So when
rare
you go
that way.
talk to people usually when you go to larger events, right, more Congress, CES, and others, when you go talk to people at these booths, their knowledge is very shallow because they're mostly marketing folks
Yeah.
or higher talent, right? But here you go talk to somebody who you're talking to somebody engineer who's working on that product, right? So that's I think one of the key values a lot of people don't realize going to the show that
Yeah.
talking to somebody who's working on the product that you're, touching and feeling.
Yeah. But I really like to I like to provide that opportunity to highlight the great work that whole community does, the
Yeah.
sensor industry folks do, because it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think it's far underappreciated. But hey, um, thanks
Sure.
Jumping on. It's really great to get your thoughts on Sensors Converge. And hey, everyone, thanks for joining and making it this far. You know what? I would highly recommend that you reach out to Prakash at www.tantraanalyst.com. He has his own podcast called Tantra's Mantra, which is great. I show up on it occasionally and we usually argue, which is really fun. And so if it's not for information and education, you might want to just listen in for like entertainment. You know, it's kind of like pro wrestling of tech. And contact him on LinkedIn and, get a hold of his reports and definitely subscribe to his newsletter and ask him about his services. And also make sure to subscribe to his podcast. And please subscribe to the Next Curve YouTube channel. And the easiest thing to do is subscribe to the Next Curve research portal at www.next-curve.com for the constant diet that you need of the tech and industry insights that matter. And Prakash, once again, thank you so much. And congratulations, Sensors Converge on a 40th anniversary.
Congratulations to QuestX. Yeah, it's a great effort indeed and really love the show.
Yep. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.